BruCast is back, baby.
This BruCast episode is brought to you by the BruCast Store. Explore a store filled with awesome goodies from hoodies to t-shirts to mugs. We've got you covered. Stay in style with BruCast. Embrace the shock, set the trend. Visit now bru-cast.com/store. Link below. Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to another BruCast episode. If it's your first time watching the show, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rank the show 5 stars. This will ensure that I keep doing what I love, which is making new episodes for you. So BruCast is also on Instagram, X, and TikTok, where we upload shorts with the highlights of the show. So follow now, BruCast on Instagram, X, and TikTok. All links on the description below. Our guest today is Nela Dunato. How are you doing, Nela?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me. Sounds really exciting.
Well, thank you for being a part of BruCast. I'm really excited for this episode. All right, so first things first. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Where do I start? Well, I am first and foremost an artist. That's something that I've been doing all my life. It's a very important part of my just experience as a human. And I work as a graphic designer. I specialize in brand design. I'm also a writer, and also I teach sometimes workshops, classes, and so on. So a lot of interest, have a lot of basically juggling a lot of balls in the air. But that's how I like it. I like experimenting with new things. I like learning new things, and then I like sharing those things with other people. So that's what I've been doing for the past, I don't know, 20 years since I started kind of publishing things online, working with clients, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely an artist. An artist. Like as soon as we started the podcast, the first thing that I noticed is the painting that you have behind you. Is that yours?
In progress still, so it's still kind of rough. I started painting that in the summer, and then I had to kind of put it off until I get some other stuff finished that is a bigger priority. But yeah, basically all of the stuff that you can see behind me in the background, those are mostly works in progress. So I always have at least 5 or 6 paintings that are just waiting for me to keep working on them. And yeah, they function as a backdrop right now, so you can't see if there's any mess in the back of the studio. That covers it up really nicely.
Oh, but now I know.
Secret, but yeah,
Oh,
it's not a secret.
the connection's a little bit bad. Oh, I think we're back. Okay. So is this oil paint? Acrylic? Okay.
I haven't tried oil yet. My studio is a bit small, so I don't like to have a lot of chemicals here. But acrylic paint, I've been working with acrylics for a long time, and I like them because they dry really fast compared to oil. So I actually got used to that. Some people don't like that, but I got used to that feature. And there's some unique things about acrylics that are possible. Collaging things, mixing other mediums inside, which with oil would be more difficult. But I would definitely like to try oil paint someday. But currently acrylic is like my main medium.
Yeah, I heard that oil paint takes forever to dry, right? So what is better? Like the colors are more vibrant, or why people still use oil nowadays?
About the experience of painting, because a lot of the things that you can do with oil, you can achieve with acrylic if you use certain chemicals, which are slowing down the drying of paint. It will never be as slow drying as oil. So, for example, a painting in oil that you finish and you leave it to dry, you should leave it for at least 6 months to a year before you varnish it or frame it because it's still a bit sticky. And acrylic paint can dries within a couple of hours. It's fully dry within 24 hours. But when you are painting, like if you have one painting session, uh, by the time you covered like the whole surface of the painting, the where you started is already dry, like completely dry. But if you don't want things to dry really fast, so you can blend the colors easier, which you can achieve with oil, essentially as the bottom layer stays wet, when you apply a new brush stroke, it will melt into the existing paint and it will create softer transitions, which is what a lot of painters really love because then you don't have like hard edges. You have the kind of a very soft quality.
Mm.
There's something, yeah, very nice and gentle about that. And you can still make that happen with acrylic, but you have to use these special kinds of chemicals or paints that are designed to be slow drying, because usually it will just dry too fast. And oil painters really love that. When it comes to color, there's not a lot of difference. We use the same pigments pretty much in all mediums. And I think it's mostly down to that experience, the tactile experience also. And also, some painters simply don't like the idea of painting with plastic, which acrylic is. So, acrylic is like liquid plastic. And when it dries, it's just a plastic film that's sticking onto the canvas. And oil sounds like it's more eco friendly. It's not entirely because you still have those pigments which are not actually, eco-friendly if you throw in the water and so on. The chemicals definitely aren't, but at least I think for a lot of people is just the idea of plastic kind of puts them off. So I think that maybe like oil is just more traditional. It's being used in the Renaissance. Like the greatest masters of art have painted with oil. So I think that also adds kind of to that mystique of oil. And I will say, I mean, oil paintings look really great and definitely would like to try. It's just a slightly different process. And I think it's down to what you get used to
Mm.
first.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of stick with that because you don't maybe want to change your process if you already got used to something.
Definitely. Yeah. And I have a hunch that oil paint is also more expensive. Am I right?
Yeah.
All right. You know, one thing that I'm obsessed about, there's this YouTube channel. I don't remember the name now, but it's like a dude. Sometimes he's narrating, sometimes he's not. He just put like some music classic on the background, maybe even not. And he's just restoring old paintings. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Video, but I've seen some videos which are have a kind of this very ASMR quality where they are restoring either paintings or furniture or clothes that are in the museums. So the I know the vibe, but I haven't. I have to look up that vid. If you remember what it is, I would like to see that because yeah.
I will look it up. I will look it up and send you later because damn, it's so. This channel, I think it's. Oh, I remember now. Baumgarter Restorations. Okay, 1 second, guys. Baumgarter Restorations YouTube. Let's look it up. Uh, yeah, I think that's it. Videos. Yeah, that's the one. And it's this guy, and he's just like restoring the older pieces, and it's so okay, there's an ad, but it's so satisfying. Like it's like you see the pictures, the paintings, they are black. I don't know why over time they just get darker for whatever
Yeah,
reason.
probably dust. I think it's probably that the dust sticks to the paint and then you have to kind of remove or sometimes the varnish gets darker over time and then you have to peel off kind of the old layer of varnish. So
Okay, dust and varnish. Yeah, here he starts. Yeah, by applying some type of product. I don't know, some acid, whatever, and like
some
he
solvent, yeah.
solvent.
Mm.
Thank you. and he just goes like area by area, and it takes forever. Takes months, but it's so satisfying.
Mm,
I think at the end he shows like the before and after. Okay, so before and okay, it's a little bit brighter. It's more saturated, and
yeah, yeah, it's less yellow. Yeah, less yellow than it was because the varnishes kind of tend to yellow over time. And so that's why old paintings usually look very yellowish because they have that layer that is kind of translucent but it has that yellow tint. But originally these paintings had a lot more brighter colors. There was a lot more blues and purples in them, and now we kind of don't see that anymore. Some of those pigments faded, but a lot of it is really down to
oh, 1 second. I think we lost you. Okay, you're back. There was a small drop there, but we're back. Um, yeah. So, talking about paint, I was in Bruges, Belgium, I think last month. Have you have you been there?
at all. But I've heard great things about Bruges. So some people I know went there, and it's definitely on my list to visit.
Oh, it's amazing, Nela. I recommend it. I did the tour guide in the river. Like there, we just went on a boat to tour, and there was like the tour guide, and he was like, this house was built certain year. There was this thing. Anyway, I don't remember the whole story, but what I remember, something that stuck with me, is the blood houses. So some of the houses in Bruges, and I think in other places of Belgium as well, they're called blood houses, and that's because they are all painted red, but not. But you guess with what? Why they're red? Because they couldn't find the right pigment at the time, or was too expensive. So they would just mix up ox blood into the paint to paint the houses. And apparently, like nowadays, this is illegal. You're not allowed to do that anymore. But those are UNESCO protected houses. So if you buy one of them, you're not allowed to paint over them. They need to have the ox blood color, which I thought it was fine. Sorry?
I mean, do they still keep that color?
Yeah, to this day.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, the actually the color in the blood is similar to the color in red earth. So iron oxides are some of the oldest pigments that we had as a human species. What we found in Earth. So the chalk, the red chalk, the bricks, essentially, that's all iron oxides, and we have iron in our own blood and at other animals as well. And so, yeah, that I didn't know about that. That's an interesting piece of trivia. I have to share that with my goth friends that would probably be interested in that. But that's also like you remember that old people, like not old people, but people of old times, they didn't throw things away. Like they used almost everything. And nowadays, like we eat animals, but we throw a lot of it away because we don't need it. But they used to just everything you got from nature, you really cherished. And that is something really, I think that we should kind of relearn to do again, that if you take something from nature, that you make the best of it. And
Mm-hmm.
even if it sounds a bit disgusting, like painting with blood, but again, you would have thrown that away. It would have been just trash, but now you used it to create something that still looks appealing centuries later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I mentioned that I'm from Brazil, right? And Brazil, they have this very famous dish. It's called feijoada. It's basically rice with a lot of dark beans and some sausage. The thing is, there's like variations. Everyone does feijoada their own way. One of the variations of feijoada, it's basically uh, parts of pig inside of the, like they do the beans broth. I don't know how to describe it, and they just put like the ear of the pig, the nose of the pig, maybe the eye. some people love it. It's like, Bruno, just take a bite. It's the best thing ever. It's like, no, come on. So I think it ties up to this what you mentioned. Like we need to make use of everything that nature has to offer. But I don't know. I wouldn't.
You don't have to eat every part, but maybe there's something else that you could do. Yeah. But that sounds, yeah, I wouldn't find that very appetizing as well. But I know that there are delicacies across the world, even where I live. There are things that, people eat, and those are like very traditional recipes that are like still kind of preserved for, because of interest, because of tradition. But a lot of people just simply don't want to eat that because we are kind of icked out by a lot of this stuff. Yeah.
You need to give us examples, Nella. Come on.
Intestines,
Oh my god.
like,
So that's
yeah.
correct.
Yeah,
So
that's
just the everyone listening understands you are from Croatia, right? Okay.
yeah, it's also, especially, I grew up on an island, and island culture is a kind of a special thing in itself because on an island the resources are very limited. You have what you can raise yourself and what you can catch from the sea. So I assume that a lot of these dishes were developed on the islands because of that. Like, you have what you have, and you have to make do with the resources you have. And so that was actually something that my grandma used to cook. And I mean, I did try it, I did eat it, but I would not willingly eat it now. And it's, yeah, I mean, but people weren't as picky as we are today. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. I have a friend. He's from Thailand. I don't remember. Oh man, I'm sorry, Baze. I'm sorry. Philippines. He's from the Philippines. In the Philippines, the newer generation don't eat that anymore, but the older generation they should do. It's called balut. Are you familiar with balut? Okay, so it's basically they have an egg, and they let the embryo inside of the egg kind of develop a little bit until it reaches the point that it's like a small chick. It's,
I just forgot the name. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they just swallow this thing, and some people even like chew on it, and you can hear like the bones crushing. It's like, oh man, how can you do that? It's a cultural thing, right? So
Testing food, which is something that other people would consider like, no way would I eat that. Yeah. I mean, it's tasty to the people that made it, and I'm not judging. Like, I'm not like, let people eat what they want. I just don't want it forced on me because, yeah, I think a lot of us kind of have trauma as kids where adults force you to try something even if you don't want to. And so now it's like imperative to only eat what I want to eat. And I'm not letting anyone tell me what to eat because that's like a big no.
yeah, that's the healthy approach. You do you, right? I remember in the movie Inside Out, they localized the movie. I think so. In the U.S., when the Riley, I think that's the main character, Riley, she wants to eat something and it's disgusting. Like the parents are trying to force her to eat the vegetables. So in the American version, it's like vegetables. In the Japanese version, it's something else. I don't know, but they localize the like the movie depending on the country where you're watching. Like the foods that is are disgusting are different, and I really like that Pixar took the time to like render different scenes for each country. I thought it was very interesting.
Oh, that they did that. Really.
Um, okay, now so changing subject a little bit. What is a brand designer?
Designer who primarily designs brand identities and logos, usually for companies, organizations of different kinds, products. And it's, to me, one of the most challenging aspects of design because when you design a brand, then it has to have longevity. When you create something for a client, they have to be able to use it for many years. Now, how many years that is, that depends. But essentially, everything else you can design and then redesign next week. Like you put a poster up, and like the next year, you're going to create a completely new poster. You put an Instagram post, and next day, you will create a different post. Like you can always change things. But when you design a brand and when you design a logo, you're not allowed to change that just whenever you feel like it. You essentially, a brand designer sets the standards for how this company or organization is going to present its content and products and services according to these very specific, I would say, not rules, but just it's a specification. So it's not just a creative part where you figure out like the colors and the fonts and the logo and all, but you also create these specifications, which essentially help clients to make sure that whatever they do, that it looks good, first of all, and that it looks uh, similar to what they have been publishing in other mediums and at other times. So let's say you design a brand for a company that will then create business cards, letterhead, and things like that. You have to have the same colors, the same fonts on all of those different printed materials. And then when they design a website, they also have to have the same logo, the same fonts, the same colors on that website. And if they create video ads or some other kinds of ads, they also have to take all those elements into those ads. So you can probably notice, if you're paying attention to some of the world famous brands, whether it's clothing or cars or food and drink, you will see that they really pay attention to that. So when you think of like the Starbucks green, it's always the same green. McDonald's red and yellow, they're always the same red and yellow, and so on. So basically, a brand designer has to figure out what would be appealing to the target demographic of the company that they are creating the brand for, and then figure out the symbolism for the logo, the typography, and the typography are essentially fonts, how you shape letters in the logo, but then also in other kinds of content. So in documents, in uh, video subtitles, like whatever, and also color palette that the client will be able to use then in different ways. And essentially, what you end up is like a little document, a little a presentation or something that is full of these specifications, like all of that I mentioned: the logo, the fonts, the colors. Sometimes there's photography guidelines, video guidelines, animation guidelines. You can create some fun. I like to create decorative objects like patterns, special kinds of color gradients, effects, and so on. So whatever you create for the client, it's essentially like a toolbox that they then use and share with their own team. So if they hire a web development company or an advertising company that will create different kinds of, like a website or advertising or PR campaigns and stuff like that, they will then follow those specifications and create something that will look aligned with everything else they have going on. And that is really important when you have a lot of people working on the same project. You have to be on the same page, because if you don't have that shared toolbox and everyone is doing their own thing, then essentially the brand is becoming what we say diluted or diluted. You don't have that recognizability anymore in the market. You don't have that the memorability, because what happens is, usually when you learn about a new product or a new company, you probably won't remember it instantly when you see it the first time. You'll probably have to see it a couple of times so for it to stick in your memory. And the best way for it to stick in your memory, if you see the same thing multiple times, that it's not changed too much over time. So that when you see it the second time, you remember, oh, I saw that before. And when you see it the third time, oh, I saw it a couple of times before. And that's what we want to have, that consistency throughout with the color and the typography and the logo design, so that when you see it multiple times, it just sticks in your memory. And then later you can essentially, you can imagine that. You can imagine a company's logos. Like all of us can imagine the Nike logo. All of us can imagine the Mercedes logo. They are like everywhere around us. And so what we as brand designers try to do is that in our small bubble, in a small market where our clients operate, they are going to become notable, memorable, uh, distinctive, different from their competition. And that is essentially what I do and what my colleagues who are also brand designers do.
That's way more than a graphic designer.
Is like there's so many ways to be a graphic designer. There's book designers, like book cover designers, and then there's the book layout designers. And those two things are sometimes the same person, but sometimes they're not. Poster designers, that's a completely separate, like a way of thinking about communication. And then there's also website designers, which have branched out into UI, UX designers. So now you have app designers. So all of us are kind of, we share a similar background, we share similar theoretical knowledge. But then, depending on the kinds of projects you work on, you have this specialized knowledge that you're kind of evolving, improving over time, and you try to be as best as you can in that little slice of graphic design, which is like a very, very big industry.
So what I take from your description, your explanation, is that you act way more like an art director because you're responsible for the entire visual language of the brand or the company. So what would be my question is, what would be the difference between a brand designer and an art director, or those roles sometimes overlap?
Director, we usually think about a corporate role in an agency, in a company. So the art director is usually reserved for, it's like I would say, a management job in a agency. And when you are a solo designer, like I work, most of the time I work by myself. Sometimes I do work in a team, but on a temporary basis. So I don't have employees. I usually, if I collaborate, it's going to be like on a project and then we each move on separate ways. So being an art director, I think essentially it requires that you have to direct other people while you're working on it, while you're working on the same project, which is something that I did do when I was volunteering in a nonprofit, where I was essentially the art director of that organization. And then I had people help me out with specific things. So I was actually giving feedback, making requests, like what would I like them to do. And so that was more of a management job. But the art director can work in different capacities. So there are directors in, again, in an advertising company, in a branding agency. So also there are directors in publishing houses where you have they're essentially managing illustrators and graphic designers. So art director can also have different specializations. So I think you can be an art director and the brand designer at the same time, and you can be art director that is not a brand designer but it's in uh, a different specialty. And you can also be a brand designer that is essentially you're your own art director. You are trying to kind of set the stage for whoever will come later, but you are not actively engaging in their process unless they reach out to you and ask something. So sometimes my clients will come back to me and ask me, oh, we're working on this new thing. can you provide feedback, or can you give us some help with this? And then we do have that kind of relationship going on. But often when I deliver the files that I created, I don't have like such an hands-on involvement anymore. If they are going to create other materials on their own, or if they're gonna hire out some of the things to, for example, their social media team. Usually I don't have overseeing like abilities over that. And with some clients, I'm permanently on their team. Like essentially they come back to me every couple of months to say we need this and that again. And so that is more of a, I am just an like their collaborator outside of their organization, but I'm doing all the hands-on work. They're not doing design themselves. So yeah, I hope I explained that difference right. Essentially, if I were to work in an agency, I would probably have the role of an art director, considering my experience so far. But I explicitly don't want to work in a management position because I like the hands-on stuff. I like designing.
Yeah.
I enjoy uh, doing the work and not telling other people how to do the work.
Mm-hmm. What I found interesting is when you mentioned like nowadays those things they broke down and divided so much that we have the UI artists, the UX artists, and there's so many different names and roles. I remember once went to this talk from Mike Hill, and he presents himself as concept designer. But at the same time that he presented himself as a concept designer, he was the one responsible for the logo and the style of the marketing. And so just for context, Mike Hill, he's a concept designer. He worked on projects such as Blade Runner, the latest movie from the latest one that came out on the cinemas. He also worked on this Netflix show Love, Death and Robots, and he was the one behind the whole marketing style, let's call it, like the visual language, like the what he even came up with the name of the show and the logo and like a lot of those things that you also mentioning. So I think it's interesting, like but he works more in the entertainment company industry. So he developed games and movies in Hollywood movies. So I think they come up with a different name for to be more specific to what he does, I guess. But it's funny that a lot of those things they overlap a little bit. So it depends if you are in the company, you're an art director. If you're outside the company, you're a brand designer. In his case, for whatever his reason, he calls himself a concept designer. So that's very interesting.
As our name, if we have control over that, so if you're the kind of person that can choose what you're going to have as your title, we essentially try to choose something that is what we want other people to know us for, because that is what they're gonna then hire you for and recommend you for. So, and when you are in a company, then you get the title bestowed upon you by your boss. You don't get to choose what you're going to call yourself if you're in an agency, essentially. And probably every agency has their own kind of way they name these different levels you can be, like from a junior designer up to the art director, and then principal. Agency principal is like the it's like a CEO essentially, but they like to use the word agency principal to kind of differentiate themselves from the let's say non-creative, not that they are not creative, but like other companies like which have these very uh, titles that we're used to.
Mm.
Yeah, but we also sometimes, we try to come up with something that is more clever, something that's more unique. So I started experimenting with the tagline, uh, like the brand design fairy godmother, because that is really how I see myself in relationship to my clients. Like I try to be their fairy godmother that's going to solve their problems and just whoosh, make everything look really beautiful. But when you're talking to potential clients, you want to make yourself clear. So if he is primarily a concept artist, that is what he's known for his character designs, for his, I don't know what specifically he is. Like people are also do they do characters? Do they do environments? Do they like that's also something that you can have a lot of specialization on. But essentially, you if you have to talk about yourself, introduce yourself, you try to think of, okay, I want people to understand what I do, because then if you use a title like an art director, a lot of people aren't, it's not a very clear title. Like it could be anything essentially. It you're not telling people what exactly you're doing in your day to day. And when you say, oh, I'm a logo designer, I'm a brand designer, I'm a book cover designer, I'm a concept artist, that is a lot more specific, and people can kind of, you know, place you somewhere in their idea of the world. And I think that's really important when you're thinking of what you're going to put on your like LinkedIn tagline, or what you're going to put in your homepage title or something, that it also has to make sense for the people you're talking to, because in a lot of industries you're talking to other people, so you have some like in-game design, people around you know certain vocabulary, you have a shared vocabulary, which game buyers don't know. And same as I am, like a lot of my colleagues, I can talk to them with these more specific industry terms. But when I talk to my clients, they don't know those industry terms. They just know, I need a logo and I need a style guide. So can you help me out? But essentially, they don't know the specifics of what is this job, what is that job, like, and they don't care. Essentially, they just want to have the job done. So I think in a lot of times we try to simplify our language. We don't want to sound like too smart, too too I'm going to say pretentious. We want to talk to people who may not be aware of even what is an art director. Why would I care if someone is an art director? Yeah. So yeah, that's also one reason why we choose our titles to be more kind of focused on what is it that I actually do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read somewhere or watched somewhere a long time ago that when you're using professional terms among your peers, that's actually you're signaling something. You're signaling that you're part of the group, so it's a good thing. The same reason why lawyers they wear suits, and not shorts, because again they're signaling that they belong to that group. They're wearing uniform, and when you're using professional terms, you're doing the same thing. And it's a good way to be precise with people who you want to be precise with. So I totally get it. Um, Nella, I remember when I was back at university, I had this teacher who was trying to explain to us what what brand means. And he came up with this example that imagine you have a cow and you get this hot iron and you just put it on her butt. And you had the logo, your logo. I think a lot of cowboys they should do that in order to like recognize which cows belong to them, etc. And he said that the term came from there. You're branding the cow, and we adapt this term to nowadays to companies and stuff. Is this true? I don't know if he was telling me the truth, but it stuck. It worked. I remember to this day, like something that you're trying to imprint into your brain, right?
Say a lot of people have a kind of a reaction against the word brand, because it did come from this uh, hot iron stamp that was put on cattle to prove that this is your cattle, which it's inhumane, and we don't do that now.
Yeah.
We now tag them with little clips on the ears,
Oh,
which is
okay.
a lot less painful. But yeah, that is actually where the term came from. And then later, I don't know if it was later, but it was essentially, maybe it was in the same time, when you had essentially, you also used stamps on different kinds of food products. So for example, if you had a keg of beer, you would stamp it that keg of beer. If you had like a crate of flour, or if you made bread, you would stamp it to prevent forgery, essentially. And I think they found something like from the Romans, like was it Pompeii or something? I'm not sure when they started doing that, but essentially they found these very old bread that is not eaten, obviously, which had these markings that the bakery would put on their bread, so they would prevent other bakeries from selling counterfeit goods. So counterfeit beer, counterfeit bread, everything that someone else could do, and maybe substitute some ingredients, make them lesser quality, and then pocket the difference. Essentially, this stamp was a proof to the buyers that they are buying a genuine thing, that they're buying products that actually come from a trusted source. And so each brewery would have their own graphic that would mark, it's kind of an emblem that would mark the origin of that product. And so I'm not sure which products were covered by that, but I do know definitely for beer, for wine, for bread, for stuff like that, that it did have that. And so I don't know the exact timeline because a lot of it is just not so well documented in history, but definitely those two points stood out for me as where we actually got that origin of branding. So for some, it's this is mine, I own these cows. And for others, is this is mine because I created it, I can prove that it's mine, and I stand behind the quality of that product. So that is the origin that I prefer more. It's essentially uh, proving to the world that they can trust in that product because it is marked by that logo, which we now call a logo. It would be some kind of an emblem in the past. So you know it's good quality, you can trust it, it's worth the money because it doesn't have any ingredients that would be unsafe or that would lower the quality of that product. And so yeah, that's branding is a lot older than many people think.
Damn, that's so interesting. So bread, wine, cattle nowadays is everything, right? We need to make money. There's so many brands, thousands of brands. So you need to stand out. Basically, you need to stand out. And talking about stand out, Nella. So the thing is, certain companies, small, very small companies. I'm not sure if you heard about it. It's called Apple. It's very very small. uh, Over the years, I've watched them doing everything that they could to stand out, think different. Remember the commercial from '84, from the '80s. They even came to the point where they all their notebooks had the glowing apple, so they would make sure that everyone that you will see it from a mile away. Yeah, he's using a Mac computer. To this day, if they have the notch right on the iPhone, so you know that's an iPhone. But the thing is, over time, for example, with the new Macs, they removed the glowing apple. With the new iMac, they removed the logo from the front. The new MacBooks, they remove the little trademark. I don't know the correct number. They removed the letters MacBook from the bottom of the screen, and I was like, what they're doing? Like that's crazy. And they started researching about it, and turns out the logic and the logic and process behind this unbranding, let's call it, was that they were already so iconic and so famous that they didn't need it anymore. So they reached like a peak where they broke the branding, I don't know, rules. Like, can you explain that?
It because it's not something I would have chosen, but I guess they know what they're doing. Like they so they have uh fans essentially, which is what a lot of brands aspire to, but very few brands actually achieve. And I don't think every brand should have to aspire to have fans because fans are like it's risky because fans are very passionate. And when you do something great, the fans will be very loud about expressing how much they love it. And when you do something that the fans don't like, they're going to be very loud about telling you they don't like it. So, when they removed the audio port from the iPhones, the first company that did it to their phones, there was a lot of loud noises about that. And essentially, they do things because they think it's going in the right direction. And whereas I think this is something that you would, for example, something that I hate about Nike sweatpants and any kind of clothes is they stamp that logo really huge. They really do that. Really, really, you can't miss it. And that's why I'm never going to buy a pair, because I hate large logos on things. But when you buy an Armani suit, you don't have an Armani logo anywhere visible. You have it on like a little, what's it called? The little bit of uh clothes, a tag in the
The
back.
tag, yeah.
And essentially, only someone who is very uh, familiar with high-end fashion will recognize an Armani suit and see, oh, how it's different from a Boss suit or some other company in kind of the same vicinity, in the same niche, let's say. So there are the unbranding was actually quite common in some industries before. It's the same like with bags. There are was Louis Vuitton who puts the pattern and the logo everywhere, and like I personally find that repulsive. Like I don't want to wear something that's gonna promote you. Like I want to wear something because it's nice, and I don't want to feel like I'm wearing an advert for something that I paid for. Like if you want me to promote you, pay me, like, or give it something for free. But I'm not going to promote you if I paid for it. Like that's kind of how I feel about clothing. And I think that's kind of the difference in this. Do you want to feel like you are like a brand evangelist or something when you're carrying something, or do you want to just, what it is? You don't need everyone else to know what it is. I think that is also when it comes to like consumers, how consumers interact with these logos or lack of logos. Uh, and a brand can decide whether they want to be pushing their logo everywhere or not. And there's no right or wrong answer, I suppose. Other brands have been doing that for a long time, so it's not new, definitely, but it is a change for them.
I think when it comes to Apple specifically, my understanding is that they're trying to have the design language speak to itself, because there's no other computer that looks like a Mac computer. There's no other phone that looks so they just let the design language be the branding itself. They don't need the Apple logo anymore, or the name. But yeah, talking about those other brands that have the big logo, aren't they targeted to a different type of consumers? Aren't they targeted to consumers who are not rich but want to show off? That, right? That's the way. That's what I get it. Yeah.
That's the aspirational side of branding, where the story is essentially, if you wear, so let's say we talk about clothes, but it's
Mm.
it's also for electronics. It counts for a lot of things. All of the You can see what the brand is trying to sell you by looking at their advertising, because they're telling you quite explicitly what they want you to think about them. And so for clothing, it's like we are telling you a story of what you should aspire to be, like what kind of a person you aspire to be, and what kind of person you want others to perceive you as. And so if you buy into that, then you buy that clothes or whatever the product is, and you signal to other people that this is who you are,
Mm.
essentially, if this is important to you at all. I mean, a lot of people don't think about clothing or goods that way. Like we're a lot more functional about it. We think about, oh, do I like the color? Do I like the fit? Do I like how it feels? Like the texture is very important also. Is it comfortable? Does my body shape look good in this clothes?
Hmm.
And lots of other things that we wonder about. So whether it's this brand or another is not high on that priority list. But for some people, it really, especially young people, like teenagers, when you're trying to make yourself known to the world, where you're trying to create an identity for yourself. Like, okay, I remember I actually had, like, let's say when I was a teenager, Dr. Martens boots were getting a lot of notoriety. They were started being worn by like regular people. Just you could buy that. Before that, they were like a workman shoe. But then teenagers started buying Doc Martens boots, and that was kind of it it was both like a fashion statement, but it was also like a counterculture statement because you had certain circles which wore them, like the punks, the metalheads like to wear those boots. So essentially, if you wanted to be a part of that group, you wanted to have those shoes just to be a little slightly closer to that subculture. So that was when I was young, which was a long time ago. But I think also every generation has something that is essentially signaling, oh, this person is cool. And then kids who want to be seen as cool want to have that because that is kind of broadcasting their status in the society, which I would say I don't like that kind of having those being focused so much on status. But yeah, some people just can't help it, and brands definitely exploit that that feature in the human brain of wanting to belong.
Yeah, definitely. We all want to belong, damn teenagers, especially when we're teenagers. While you're talking, I just remember this college humor sketch they developed from Back to the Future. Have you seen it? So they actually come to 2015, but the real 2015 that we lived through, and all the teenagers like they were expecting like the Back to the Future 2015 from the movie, but when they arrive to the real Back to the real 2015, they see all the cringy teenagers with their smartphones and their hoverboards that are actually I just gonna show you. It cracks me up every time. There we go. I'm not sure if you can hear it.
Boards, this is the closest thing we have.
What the fuck is this?
It's called an oxboard, Marty. It's slightly faster than walking.
Oh, okay, well, I guess if it helps me get away.
See, Marty, there's a pack of vine stars riding past right now.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I don't know what Vine is, but I hate them.
It's so cringy, but that's what teenagers are. They're trying to find their place in the world, and they don't care if it's cringy or not. They're just looking for it, right?
Best you can with the knowledge that you have, and you don't have a lot of experience, so it is what it is, and we all have to go through that. I think it's problematic when people don't grow out of it.
Yeah.
Like if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, and you still act like a teenager, well, it's a bit of a problem. I think people should kind of evolve their values into a more mature form. And but the culture isn't really helping. I think that what you are kind of seeing in the media, what you're being sold all the time, is kind of pushing you towards those teenage approach to personal values, which is be seen, belong, just at any case, like don't uh, essentially put the community, just the belonging as a higher priority than being authentic and stuff like that. So essentially, it's a it's a bit difficult to actually find your own authentic voice and identity when everything is telling you that you should be the way, they're telling you to be, like what the trends are.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, yeah, and especially nowadays because there's so much stuff going on all the time. You start liking something, and then there's like a new movie that just comes out, and it's as amazing as the previous one. Like with internet and social media, we are exposed to so many cool things all the time. So I can see how many people don't grow out of this, trying to find themselves, identifying all the time with new movies and new brands, because there's so many of it. And it's not like those brands and those movies and all those companies are trying to not trying to get you. They are. I just remember this this study that says that adolescents now last from 10 to 24 years old. So it doesn't stop when you are 18. It goes
mhm.
until you're 24, which, I mean, it makes sense. Uh, I mean, kind of makes sense, especially when you look at those pictures from your parents or your grandparents back in the day when they were 18. They already look like 30 and they had like 3 kids. Yeah.
When she was 18. And that photo, she doesn't look like she's 18. She's seen some stuff. Yeah. I mean, she was alive during the, World War II, stuff like that. So yeah, it left a mark on the people. But this is actually adolescence stops officially, I think now, as we understand it, is when our brain stops growing, essentially when our brain is fully developed, which now we understand is about the age 25. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah, that's why there's a lot of potential to go wrong uh, in your teenage years, with addiction, with everything, because your brain is still evolving, your brain is still growing, and essentially you're teaching it certain things that will be very difficult to unlearn once your brain stops growing. And so we just decided, okay, 18 is going to be a cutoff for when you are uh, an adult, when we consider you an adult. But now, most people, not everyone, but a lot of people go to university, so they are not self-reliant. They don't have to find a job immediately
Yeah.
after ending high school. So there's a lot of these things that happen which enable you to kind of prolong your adolescence. And I think that's healthy because our life is longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of like when you think about hobbits in the Lord of the Rings or and the Hobbit. So because they live to over 100 and something years old, that is their life. I forgot how long. Some nerd is gonna tell me how long that is, but I don't remember. They are only considered adult at age 30. Uh, Anything below that, they're still considered like a youngster, like an adolescence. And so now, as our lifespans are getting longer, and we are expected to work longer, and basically never retire, which is another problem. So our adolescence also becomes longer. And when our lifespans used to be shorter, and our quality of life wasn't so great, then of course you had to stop acting like an adult as early as possible. Like as soon as you could help your community with, through work, through actual labor, you would have been put on some duty. And nowadays, we can afford to have a longer childhood and a longer adolescence. And I don't mind that because there's going to be decades where you're going to have to be a responsible person. So I think it's good that kids have that time to learn more about life and learn more about themselves. And the most important thing is to use it wisely when you have that time, because later when you start paying your own bills, you're not going to have the freedom and flexibility that you have when you are still a student and with not many worries on your brain. Even if those worries that you have seem like the biggest problems of the world, which again, I'm not judging. We've all been there. Uh, but I think there's that we kind of lessen the pressure on people to figure out what they want to do professionally as young as possible. I think that's positive because when I was like 15, 16, trying to think about what I'm going to do for a living, I had no idea. I knew what my options were, some of my options, but I didn't know what I wanted to study. I didn't know what I wanted to learn. I was kind of spread in all the different directions, and I needed more time. I didn't have the time because everyone else expected me to figure things out by the time I'm 18 and to just go to university, graduate, go find a job. Like everything was just placed like an expectation in front of me, and I was just not ready for that. I needed more time to just figure things out. And then I had to do that in my own free time while I was pretending to be studying. Essentially, I was a very bad student, and I was spending every free minute learning design, making art, playing with computer graphics, like making Photoshop collage and stuff like that. All the things that I found fun, and only later did I realize, oh, I can actually do this. I can actually make a living doing this. And uh, I think it's good that we are allowing kids nowadays to have a bit more freedom, to experiment a bit more, to not think that, oh, if you don't start university immediately after high school, you're lost. No, you can go work for a couple of years and then go to university later. Like you can have a gap year. You can, like, all of these ideas that used to be so exotic. Now we are figuring out that, well, actually, it's good for people to try things out while they're younger because it's going to be harder later when you have responsibilities, when you have a mortgage, when you have kids, when you know, it's just you will never have so many options as you do when you are young. If you have the support of your family, of course, that is maybe something that not everyone can take for granted, but it is something that I think the society is kind of figuring it out, that we actually have to give people more time because then we're going to expect of them to be a productive member of society for the next 60 years or so. So
Hmm. Have you seen the Bee movie? It's all about that. Like the bees, they are born and they're expected to find their job as soon as possible, and that's it. Everyone's proud when you find your job. I mean, you don't even find your job. Your job is assigned to you, and you should be proud about it. And that's what you're gonna do for the rest of your life. And in the bee movie, one rebellious bee goes against the system, and it's like, hey guys, I kind of don't know what I want to do. Why you're forcing like some random task for me into me? I don't want to do it, and I don't know what I want. So it tackles this problem that we're talking about, and I couldn't agree with you. It makes perfectly sense. What's the new average lifespan? It's like 70, 80, something like that. I think it varies on the country, of course.
country, yeah, I think Japanese have something like 84 or something, but I don't know what is for Europe and the Americas. I would have to check that. I never know, but it is growing. Yeah, you can check it right now.
Yeah, let's check it out. So the average lifespan of an European is 80 years, 80.1 years. During the last decade, life expectancy in the EU rose at a relatively consistent pace until 2019. So that's Europe. Let's see Japan. 84. Damn. I saw like there's a new study, a recent study saying that I think no, I'm sorry, it's not that new. You know what? I'm gonna check it out. I don't want to say bullshit. Water and lifespan. Adults who stay well, no, that's not what I mean. What I mean is like when you live near to bodies of water and you see water, it's just so good for your mental health that it extends your life expectancy. Not only that, people who lives outside of cities live in average 5 years more than those who live in big cities. So yeah, I think it makes totally sense that Japanese live more, especially because they eat so much more healthier than in the US. I- Would you say that they eat even healthier than Europeans? I don't know. From
They do eat a lot of fish. Fish is healthy. Yeah. I would say okay. Yeah, I mean I think they do eat more fish than red meats, which is something that doctors have been saying for a long time that if you want to eat protein, that is healthier to eat fish than it is to eat red meat. So I guess Japanese have been doing that for a long time, and it I don't know what else they're doing. Maybe they also eat algae. I don't know.
yeah.
People now algae are considered a superfood. I have no idea if there's any scientific backing to that, but they do eat, and we don't really. So maybe we should start eating more algae.
Let's eat more algae, guys. So Nella, we are reaching our time limit. I don't know how comfortable you feel to keep talking. I a bit.
For a bit more. Yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
that's good. I still want to ask you about your book. We haven't talked about your book yet. So you're an author. You wrote The Human-Centered Brand. So could you talk a little bit more about it to us?
That book in 2018. So that's coming up on 4 years, 6 years now. Wow. Time flies. I I've been writing that book for about 2 years, I think. I started in 2016, but then I was writing the in the beginning of the process, it would kind of, sporadic. Uh, Originally, essentially that book evolved from the methodology that I developed to use with my clients. And the problem with branding books as I found them at the time, I don't know what if it's still the same, but back then when I was looking for books, I realized all of these books about branding are written for designers or for marketing executives or for CEOs of huge corporations, mostly about product-based businesses. None of it was written for a small business owner that sells services. Literally, I've read many of them. I researched all that I could find. I couldn't find. There were some books that are useful and they kind of touch on the concepts, but they were not explicitly about branding. So like it's not that like there was nothing useful for small business owners, but it was nothing specifically for branding. And I thought, well, I already know a lot about this, and I saw some like indie bloggers started publishing their own books in the couple of years prior. So I thought, maybe I could publish a book. Like, because before that, I thought you had to be someone really important in order to be a book author. Like, someone had to actually invite you to write a book, or like that you had to be offered a book deal or something. And then when I saw that how many of these bloggers became self-published authors, it gave me kind of the confidence to try and publish a book myself. And so I started writing this book, not entirely from scratch, because I had a lot of notes, that something that I wrote for my blog, something that I wrote for my workshops. So I basically collected all of that and then kept adding more and more and more and more that would fit in kind of this structure that I set for the book. And what I wanted to be structure wise, I wanted it to be like a class or a workshop where you go through each chapter as if it was a lesson. And there were actually some questions you could answer on the back of every chapter, and that by the end of the book you would have actually created the foundations of your own brand. So that was my ambition, my goal for the book. And so it took me a while to write it because writing a book is very time consuming, and I was doing it alongside of my own freelancing job, and then I was also teaching a class, a graphic design class, for about half a year, a couple of years in a row. And so that then I realized, okay, if I want to publish this book, then I have to get really serious about it. I set myself a deadline that I was going to publish it in 2018 in July. And I found a book editor that helped me keep me accountable, and she was reviewing my chapters, giving me feedback. So that was very helpful. And then by the end, I actually managed to finish the book just on the last day of my deadline. And at the same time, as I had to kind of hype it up, tell people I'm actually doing this, I'm actually going to publish it, it's coming out soon. So that was also just this exercise in how to market a self-published book. So doing that on your own, it's quite intense. And it was I got burned out by that project, but I'm really happy that I did get it done. I had like a pre-order period, and when the first pre-order started coming in, I was like, wow, people actually want this book. It was so exciting because when you talk about it, people get like, oh yeah, sure, great, very encouraging. But until the first person buys the book, you don't actually know if this is actually going to pay off, if
Mm.
people are actually going to want the book, and if they're going to like the book. Like, also the reviews are very important. Like, you want to hear. I had beta readers, so actually I got some reviews and feedback on the book before it became public, and I think that's also very helpful, for especially for self-published authors, that you get that circle of trust, some people you give this before you end up publishing it, so if you need to change anything last minute, you can still do that. And so the book has been out for a couple of years. It's not a bestseller, but it's been a steady seller. So what I think I with really is cool, that like, it's consistently people are buying the book, writing to me, telling me that it's been really useful for what they're doing, and that makes me really happy. And just, I want to publish more books because I do enjoy writing books. I don't enjoy so much the self-publishing, the selling aspect, as much as writing, but writing is really important to me, and I always have a lot of things to say, as I think we can now see based on this chat, that I can talk all day long. And we're actually working on a second book right now. The manuscript is done. I'm now doing the illustrations. So, and I have ideas for more books. So I think this is gonna be something that I'll be working on for many years to come. But yeah, the first one is always the most exciting. It's the most special.
Well, congratulations. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean that you're the perfect podcast guest. I love when people talk talk a lot. That's the best thing ever. Um, so what I wanted to say? Oh my god, I blanked. So yeah, now remember you said that you don't like the selling part that much. What do you have against selling your book?
It takes a lot of time, and my primary work is working with clients one-on-one. And
Okay.
so that part of work is, uh, I don't have to spend a lot of time marketing. I did when I started my business. So I started a blog, I used social media. So I did everything I could to kind of get interest for my work. But the thing is that I like to spend most of my time actually doing the work, and a bit of time promoting my work. So it's not that I'm against it. It's just when you have a product, any kind of product, that you have to sell to a lot more people for it to be profitable because the price is lower, then you have to spend more time marketing it. And I have been like the worst marketer of my own book, because I once the launch has passed, I simply forgot to keep promoting it. Like, it's a very passive. Like, I have the book website, I have some blogs that are about the subject, and then they kind of have this call to action about the book and so on. But I'm not actively posting about the book on social media. I have not created any videos about the book, like zero videos. Just basically, uh, I'm not doing my part as a promoter to kind of get more publicity, more interest, more sales, which is kind of required if you're a self-published
Yeah, well,
author.
you're doing it now. By the way, this is not a sponsored video, okay? But you're promoting it now.
But is when people actually call me on to talk about it. But I do not go out of my way to promote. I'm
Mm-hmm.
such a lazy self-published author, like not a good example, not setting a good example for other self-published authors, because it really does take a lot more work. And I'm just focused so much on my design career and on making things. Like I'm making a new book and I'm not so that doesn't leave me a lot of time to promote my former book. And that's like that when you do most of things by yourself, then some things just slip through the cracks and you prioritize based on what you find most important. And it's not essentially, so I'm always motivated by creative urges, by creative ideas, by my interest, and not so much by money. If I were motivated by money, then I would be spending way more time marketing and not so much time creating. But that's just not me. I'm get excited about creating the thing, and then I kind of lose excitement when it comes time to promote the thing. And it's just one of the things that I'm, struggling with. Like we all have our weak spots. So that it is what it is. Nothing against promotion. It's just a less interesting part of the process for me.
Got it. That makes totally sense. So the human-centered brand. What is the human-centered brand? What what that means?
And is essentially a brand that takes into account the values and the unique uh, perspective and unique uh, talents and other, let's say, qualities or traits of people who are behind the brand. And the difference between a human-centered brand and the personal brand is that a human-centered brand can be of a company that is of more than one person. So you have essentially what I said, what it was really hard to find branding for small businesses, because you have the corporate brand, which is essentially you have these standards, you have these visuals, and the people in the corporations are faceless. They are just representing the brand. They don't have an authentic voice of their own in that engagement. They're essentially trying to mask their own existence and just make you see the brand, the company. And the personal brand is what we can consider an artist, a content creator, like someone who is, they are the brand. So, essentially, I have a personal brand with my own name. I do have a logo, I do have a brand identity, but essentially it's me. Like, I'm not using a different entity to present my design work and my artwork and so on. And somewhere in the middle for me is the human-centered brand, which is uh, represents the people who work in the company in a more transparent way, in a more authentic way, so that they do have a voice. Even when they are presenting a company entity, it's not just a faceless company. It's a company that has a heart, which is the people that are in it, and not just the CEO, and not just the key decision makers, but the entire team essentially is represented in that brand. And they have common values. They find what is bringing them together. They have everyone in the team has their own special skills, has their own talents, has their own strengths and weaknesses. But as a group, how are they uh, working together to create the best kind of experience for the company's clients? And so the companies that I work with, they're small teams. They're usually up to 10 employees, sometimes 20. And I really get to know them very closely and observe how they work, how they think. And it is then what I try to do is to present that to other people so that the other people can get the essence, the gist of what their brand is about in a couple of seconds. What sometimes took me weeks to kind of figure out, to dig deep and find that. And I think everyone who is creating a brand for themselves will have a much easier time if they try to see what is it really that makes me tick as a person, what motivates me as a person, what are my values. That is essentially how you create a human-centered brand and not just some bland corporate manufactured brand that is just invented. It doesn't have a basis on an actual human experience. For that is at least how I see the difference between human-centered versus something that is not human-centered. Now, I've seen many companies now use the term human-centered. I have a Google alert set up so that whenever a new website shows up with those words, I will get an email. And I'm like, seriously, seriously, that's not what I meant when I wrote the book, but go on. But I don't mind. I mean, it's not copyright. It's not trademark, I should say. You can't copyright a book title. Essentially, I didn't trademark that. I don't care if other people use it, but this is what I meant when I wrote the book, and when I talk about this, that's what it means to me. And to some other people who are using it in some other context, maybe it means something else. That's fine as well.
Hmm. So the human-centered brand, it's not a faceless corporation presenting themselves as a faceless corporation, but it's also not a single person. It's actually a person or a group of people backed up by their values, and and they create a brand around those values and around this person, this group of people, and they present that as their brand. That's the human-centered brand.
Because when you think about how to portray something so complex as an organization with different people, like, it's very difficult to communicate that. You have to simplify that. You have to boil it down to the essentials, because otherwise you're never going to be able to communicate that to your clients, to your audience. It's just impossible. People are complicated. But what we try to do is find what is common to everyone, what is most important, and find those keywords, find those values, those brand voice qualities. Like, what are the things that there. So in my model, there's like these 5 levels: uh the, the core values, the unique value proposition, the brand voice, your ideal client profile, and then the visual brand identity. And all of these are marked by either you create a definition or you create some keywords. So there's a process to that. But essentially, you try to simplify, you try to boil it down to the essence. Like, for example, like when you're making a perfume out of a plant, you can't take the whole plant. You have to distill it and distill it and distill it until you have the strong, this essential oil that is very, very potent. A drop of it will make the whole room smell in a certain way. So that is how I see the process of distilling this complicated group of human beings into something that can be communicated in a minute, and that can be understood, and that will give the other person an impression that is accurate, that is really just giving them the sense of whether this is something or someone I want to work with or not, which is a decision that cannot be made lightly. But that is, if you can make that easier for other people, then that is, of course, going to make your marketing and branding more effective. So that is essentially, it's a process that takes some skill, takes some time, but it also is something that people can do by themselves, if they are willing to just dig deep and explore their own, some of their maybe hidden sides, or something that is not always visible on the surface, but that is definitely impacting everything we do.
Mm-hmm. KISS. Keep it stupid simple. Have you heard this term before? Yeah, yeah.
Very important, very important, wise uh, mottos to live by.
Yeah, yeah. KISS. So, I watched an interview of a guy who worked with Steve Jobs, and one thing, like his takeaway of working with Steve Jobs, is that he was very peculiar on how would you present stuff to him and how would you communicate and talk to him. Steve Jobs wanted, that's what the guy said, the bare essence. He wanted the most simple and fast forward, that's how you say, simple explanation possible about any problem or any solution. If you try to overcomplicate it, he would just, okay, fuck off, I don't have time for this, I have stuff to do. And yeah, I can see it, like, he lived by simplicity. He even tried to shrink down his outfit to one single outfit, so he didn't have to worry about it anymore. So at the end of the day, simplicity also means efficiency, right, in the workplace. And also, by try to find the simplicity or the essence, there's no way around. You need to find your values. It's there, so you need to look for it. And I think that's what he was striving to. Well, since we're talking about Apple again, I wanted to ask you if you have your top 5 favorite brands, the ones that you say, okay, they did a good job.
The products that I like to use, or the brands that I like as the way they are branding their stuff.
The brands that you like because the way they're branding their stuff.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because a lot of the brands that we interact, they may not be international. So some of the brands that we have here in Croatia maybe are not famous worldwide. So that would be, maybe a barrier there for that. But yeah, it's interesting. So because I see so many because it's my job. So it's really hard to pick what is my favorite, because every day I see something new, and then it kind of pushes away something that's older. mm, that's a hard question. It's really it's a difficult question. I would say maybe it's even something that I would be more critical of than most people. Because like something is, oh, I wouldn't have done that way. um I would say that from the logos, just logos, not the entire brand, I do like the Nike logo. It is one of my favorite logos in the world because it is symbolic, it is simple, it is stood the test of time. It's I don't like plastered on the clothes, but it is good. And so for people who don't know, it's maybe you can find the Nike of Samothrake. I'm not sure how that is actually spelled in English, but it's a Nike statue. You can type statue. And essentially, these wings of the statue, that is what the logo represents. So
Really?
probably, yeah, those wings, you can see that there's a, yeah, okay, someone made a actual
I heard,
overlay
I
of the
heard,
logo.
I heard that they paid like a student $5 to come up with the logo, and that's it.
It was about 35, and they paid her later. They gave her a lot more money later on. So yeah, it was a female student. I forget the name. But no, Nike designer, I think. Yeah, so the font was a bit different, but the swoosh.
Swoosh.
Yeah, Carolyn Davidson. Swoosh, that's how they call it. Yeah, she actually got some Nike stock, and I think a diamond ring in the shape of the swoosh, and some more money. So she did all right. They didn't have to give her that. So good for them that they rewarded their designer, because there was nothing in the contract that made them do that. They did it because they really appreciated her work. And I think, I mean, to create such an iconic logo so young, I mean, it's amazing. It's really yeah, look at that handwriting. I mean, it's this is old school design. This is how they did it with transparency and taping papers onto papers. They didn't have the digital tools we have right now. It's so much harder to be a designer back then. So kudos to Mrs. Caroline who did that. And yeah, I think that's really important for me, that the logo is symbolic, that it has something that you can connect with, and also that it means, I mean, you only get that meaning from the name. The swoosh on its own is not so clear, but when you combine it with the goddess name, then you kind of get that visual. Yeah, so it's hard to think of more that I'm really liking.
You know one that I really like? the
Yeah, I mean, I like logos. I like different logos, but the branding is usually it's something like I get a gift or something and it's packed really nicely, and then the box really looks cool, and I'm like, wow, this is really nice. They're really paying attention. But usually those are like smaller brands, so I forget about it because I don't interact with it uh like very very frequently.
That's okay. The Nike one's a very good one. Was a hit, right? Caroline Davidson. What's her name again? Something like, yeah, Caroline Davidson. Yeah. You know one that I really really like. I like the IKEA one. I think it has also been the same forever. So IKEA logo. And what I like about it is that they have the Swedish flag colors on it. I look at it, I just think about Sweden, basic. Oh no, okay, there was an evolution there. Let me share the screen. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
What was this? The first. One of them looked like just mud.
Uh-huh.
What is this?
Yeah, not a good
Yeah.
that's not a good one. Yeah, a Mercedes has also been around for over 100 years. I don't remember when was the first one, but their logo also, um, it's really, really old. Hmm, what's it say up top? I think the gold.
The gold
Yeah, I
one.
can see. Yeah, I can't see the years on that image. 1909, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so they did a bit of a back and forth, but essentially the symbol from 1909 still in use, still iconic, still everyone knows about it. So I think that is something that all of us designers are kind of secretly hoping to create something that will be around for as longer than we are, essentially. We want to make a mark that would surpass us, that would survive even when we're gone. So yeah, I think that's some of the design giants and celebrities have achieved that, and they're fondly remembered many decades later. And I think that is kind of the best award you can get, the best recognition you can get as a designer, is if your work stays around for decades later.
Yeah, for sure. I think we as humans, we all have consciously and or unconsciously those immortality projects. We all want to live forever through our work. And I think that's no different when it comes to designing brands. All right, so the human centered brand, that's the current book that you released a couple years ago. So are you working on any other book that you can talk about it?
That the topic of my next book is creativity. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to kind of change speeds, change directions occasionally, because I got for a while after publishing the book, I got a bit bored talking about branding. I'm not bored with branding. I love doing it. I just didn't want to talk only about that, because that's not the only subject that I'm interested in. And the book about creativity, just the idea came to me. It was during pandemic. I had a bit of free time on my hands, And essentially I was just journaling about something, and that journal entry turned into an outline for a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote that book. It's not a long book. It has like maybe less than, like, just the text, maybe 50 pages. With illustrations has a bit more, but essentially I wrote it in about 2 months since I first got the idea. So that went really fast. And then it took me, it's still taking me many years, about 3 years, to work on illustrations, because I'm doing it, alongside doing my work for clients and stuff. So essentially, it's in Croatian right now. I will get it translated into English when I'm finish the illustrations, and I am kind of trying to shop it around first, see if any publishers will be willing to take it. If not, then I'm gonna figure something out that would maybe not require me to do all of that selling and marketing work by myself, because we already saw how that ended up the first time. But yeah, essentially what I wanted was something very encouraging for people who either have difficulty even believing that they are creative, or uh, essentially making creativity a priority in their life,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
also people who struggle with some very specific challenges. So the way I outline my book is that each chapter is about a challenge, or what we might call a creative block. And then I'm just kind of thinking through why that challenge is happening, what might be behind it, and how we can use some of our strengths and some of our, I'm using these kind of positive sides, because I believe that behind every block is like a hidden opportunity for discovering this positive side of creativity. They're kind of, you flip the coin, and depending on which side you're going to flip it on, you either going to have this problem or not. But essentially, by focusing on the positive side, you can overcome the challenge. So that is the, if you have a lack of time, how do you go around that? Well, for me, I think the solution to that, not just a lack of time, but lack of time, money, opportunity, anything. I think the key to that is boundaries, setting boundaries on other things that are sucking out your time, that are draining your resources, essentially just protecting yourself, and uh, from the world, who is just has so many demands on you. So it could be like, if you are having issues with boredom, then the solution for that is curiosity. And how can you be more curious about your practice? How can you learn from other uh, artistic disciplines, which are maybe different from your own? And so that is essentially the idea behind the book. And I learned a lot while writing it. There were some things that I do have challenges. Like, I'm not above that completely. I do still feel a lot of these challenges that are coming up. But there were some things that I had no idea about until I started writing the book. I discovered things that were my blind spots, and I was solving them, resolving them, working on that as I was writing the book, so that I could write about it from a kind of more, let's say, enlightened uh, experience. And I think that is really interesting about any creative project, is that any creative project worth doing is going to teach you about something. And you don't always know what, you rarely know what it's going to be. The Sometimes the lessons are just so unexpected, but they're always worth it. They're always welcome. So even when, like, there were so many times during writing this book when I was just, will I ever be able to complete it? Like, this is so hard. Why am I not being able to keep it up? Why am I falling off the wagon? And then you realize why. And it's like, Whoa, I had no idea I was doing that. I had no idea I was actually creating this problem for myself. Like,
Could you
that's
give us an
interesting.
example?
The essentially what made my book so like I stretched that process of illustrating it for so long is I was essentially creating this struggle for myself because I didn't have I essentially I was neglecting the playful side of creativity. I took it too seriously. And when you take something too seriously, then it becomes a struggle. And I think that is kind of the balance of creativity is that, yeah, you need to do the best you can, but uh, if you set your expectations super high, and if you don't allow yourself some room to play and to experiment and to try things out which might not work, then essentially you are creating from this state of anxiety, from this state of just being very, uh, I
Rigid?
should say, tense, yeah, tense or rigid. Yeah, yeah. Essentially, you say it has to be this way, or it's not gonna work, or I'm not gonna be happy with it. When essentially, so many interesting things can happen if you just allow yourself to just do whatever, just try whatever, and maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. Like I had some illustrations that I had to paint over because they didn't work out the first time. And then there was something essentially I forgot how to play with my art. And that's one of the reasons why illustrations are more difficult for me than writing, because in writing you can edit and edit and edit so many times. The first draft is never the last. There's a lot more room to fix things. And in visual art, because I'm working mostly traditionally nowadays, I do sometimes, do editing digitally. I did do a lot of digital painting before, but now I'm just more into traditional art. And sometimes, there is a point of no return. And that was really causing me like mental blockades. Like I was afraid of painting. I was afraid of creating the art that is not going to be good enough because I was creating such high expectation for how the art has to look. Like it has to be really good because I want to have this really beautiful illustrated book. And so I was just creating a lot of this. I was creating a mess for myself essentially, because when you approach the book with it has to be the best thing ever, not ever, but like the best thing that I could come up with, then it's like you're performing on stage 24/7, and that's not healthy. Like you have to have an opportunity to just in private just fail and do stuff that doesn't work and just relax essentially. So that was something that I had to learn in order to make progress with this book, and this is something that I'm sharing in the book because I think it's a very important lesson that especially if you're someone who's been creating for a long time, then you create expectations for yourself that each artwork you make or each video you make or each song you make has to be better than everything else you've done before. And that's not always possible. So essentially what I started allowing myself to do is make art that sucks. And then, I don't have to include it in the book, but I have to allow myself to make art that sucks in order to feel more relaxed and enjoying the process more, essentially.
Allow yourself to fail. Basically, yeah. Yeah. That's very important. Very important. So let's see. So creativity and fun go along together. You cannot separate them both.
If you can combine them. I'm not saying that every part of the process is equally fun. I think we all have different things that come easier to us than others. So, for some people, for me, drawing is easier than painting. So I enjoy the process of drawing more than I enjoy the process of painting, but I have found ways to make painting more enjoyable for myself. Just to maybe take certain shortcuts that save time, or maybe use certain techniques, combine techniques that kind of work well together, and so on. So I think, but even I try to have fun when I work for clients, because I think that when you have fun, you kind of open yourself up. Just your brain works differently.
Yeah.
I mean, I do know that some psychology studies have found that when people are more relaxed, when they're less stressed, they're going to come up with more creative ideas. That is for sure. But I experientially, I feel like uh, I do a better job for my clients when I'm having fun, because then I allow myself to go some on these side quests, and maybe come up with something that I wouldn't have thought the client might like, but I really like it. And then I'll show it to the client, and they see it and say, oh, wow, we do really like it. Something you wouldn't expect, because you think, oh, this is too wild. This is too risky. But then they see it and they're like, we're into this. This is cool. So, I think it's because people generally like to have fun. And when you are having fun while you are creating something that other people are going to see, then you are uh, inspiring them to have more fun. I think any creator that is sharing any kind of media, uh, we are influencing how other people are feeling when they consume what we have created. And so I think that energy of what we're putting into it is going to get transmitted through what we're putting out. So I think if I'm having fun while I'm making something, then other people might have more fun while they're reading it or looking at it or using it as a design for their brand or what have you.
Isn't it creativity a personality thing?
Kind of approaches to there are two kinds of creativity, I think. So one is like the basic process that every human being can access. So it's just a problem solving ability, essentially. And what usually the psychological testing does is this is like they do a test, like how many words can you come up with that have relationship to this subject or theme, or how many uh, different uses can you think for this object, stuff like that. And what they found is that little children actually do very well in these tests. So essentially, when you are young, you have this capability. It's a kind of very innate ability to the human species, and that is why we are a technological species, because you cannot have technology without creativity. Essentially, you cannot have invention without creativity, and creativity is even present in some animal species. So we're not the only ones that have this. So that is like the essential creativity, the baseline creativity. And then there is this, what we like to see, that certain people are more creative than others. I would say that certain people have honed their creativity skills more than others, and some people feel the need to express themselves creatively more than others. So I feel this as a very important need in my life, that I have to do something creative, whereas some people maybe don't do that. But everyone has the potential to do something creative, but I think you need to practice that. So it is a skill that you develop. It is something that, and we're all attracted by different things. I was never super great with music. I mean, I did play music, but I was not one of the best in it. There were other people who were very musically talented, very creative in the musical realm. And so we all kind of can find where our skills are best applied. And also, you can still do creative stuff even if you'll never become super great at it. Like, you can play music for fun. You can paint for fun. You don't have to be good at it, actually. That is kind of, I think the problem is that a lot of people, because we share a lot of things with others, other people can see what other people are doing. So we're all comparing ourselves to each other. And so we have this idea that everything we do has to be good, when in reality, it doesn't have to be good. You just have to enjoy doing that. And anyone can do that. It's just not everyone can be a professional creative. That is the difference between, someone who has this developed creative capacity and you can create ideas on demand, essentially, because you as a designer and I'm as a designer, we have deadlines, we have projects, we have to deliver stuff other people expect us to. That is something you train for. Not everyone can do that, but just knit a sweater or play ukulele or draw mandalas to relax, that's something anyone can learn to do, just the very basics
Yeah,
of it.
totally agree. I think one of the biggest blockages that people have is that they're always comparing themselves to other people. So they always think, oh, I'm gonna do this mandala, but there's this Japanese guy who does it 10 times better, so what's even the point? Well, the point is you're gonna have fun. And the healthiest thing that you can do is compare it to your previous mandala and all the mandalas, all the other mandalas that you did before those, and how much fun you're having doing them. And I think it ties again to what you mentioned earlier. Like, you need to have fun, and as long as you're having fun, the creativity will come, and you get better at it naturally, and people will enjoy your work more, basically. So yeah, I totally resonate with what you're saying, Nella. So I would like to stay here more 2 hours. I have so many questions about the branding. So another times, yes. Of course. Nella, last question. Do you have any so the motto from BruCast is turn up, tuning, turn up, be inspired. That's our motto. So do you have any inspiring words for young aspiring branding designers? You got it. Yeah.
About will be inspiring as well.
Of course.
So
Of
that
course.
is, yeah, I would say uh, that the best way to kind of differentiate yourself as a designer is to figure out what makes you really happy to do and what you enjoy doing the most, and just lean into that, because there's so many ways to do this. There's no right or wrong way. Everyone has their own process. Everyone has their own strong points and weaker points, and we can't be all alike each other. And I think it's best as we are not, because clients are different, designers are different. We have to connect with the kind of clients that appreciate our skills, our worldview, our style. And so trust your instincts when you are drawn to a certain style or where you are drawn to learn a certain skill. Trust that it will be useful in your work down the line. No side quest is wasted. Just this is something that's helping me evolve, is that I play, I learn, I experiment as a designer in my own free time, and then I bring that into my professional work. So don't make your paid work just take up all of your energy, all of your focus. Always leave a bit of time and space for your own curiosity, your own desire to learn new things, and just see where that will take you. And I think you're going to go somewhere in a different direction than where I did, but it's going to be awesome, because it's going to be perfect for you.
Beautiful. Let's end there. So, can you tell people where they can find your work?
website is neladunato.com. And basically, you can find everything there. And there's my design portfolio, my artwork, my blog. You can find your way from there onto other places on the internet where you can find me. I mean, I have a YouTube channel. It's not very active, but it's at Nela Dunato. So feel free to, if you're interested in the topics that I share about on my channel, check them out. I don't publish regularly, but when I do, I try to make it worth it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any comments or questions or just want to say hi, please do. I respond to every comment and message I get. So yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nela. Thank you very much, everyone. If it's your first time watching the show, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rank the show 5 stars. This will ensure that the podcast will be recommended to even more people and allow me to keep doing what I love. BruCast is also on Instagram, X, TikTok, and where we upload shorts with the highlights of the show. So follow now, BruCast on Instagram, X, and TikTok. Links on the description below. Bye, everyone. Bye, Nela. It has been a pleasure. See you next time, everyone. Bye-bye.